pretty much just a whole disaster the way that I did this. Hello friends, you guys are always asking me, how do I come up with my ideas? How do you get through artist block? Where do your ideas come from? And this is a very abridged version of where all of that comes from. You want to take account of all the things that are making you happy in terms of creativity, and you want to keep them together in a log. So you can either do this by saving Instagram pictures, or you can have a Pinterest board. What that will do is it will give you kind of like a database of things that you can always access if you're running low on ideas, or if you just want to be adventurous with what you do. The first thing that I want to highlight is trainers. I love trainers. I get a lot of inspiration from trainers, and one of my favorite accounts to follow is ASAP Ricky. He has a great page on Instagram. He's always copying sick pieces. I think his idea of style is just so iconic to me. One of my favorite things that he's copped is the Travis Scott Jordan 1s. I really love the colorway, and I started seeing a trend. Remember, a trend is 3s. 1 is just an anomaly, 2 is like a ooh, and 3 is a trend. Been seeing a trend of a lot of brown and pinks being used, especially in footwear. So you've got these Go Flares here on Converse. They're using a lot of neutrals and pink, and also these human-made Adidas using a lot of browns and pinks. I actually did manage to cop these as well. I was super proud of that. I like to use a lot of neutrals and brown in my work, as you can see. This hood is available in the description down below on my website, by the way. Check it out. Also, there's this tattoo artist who I actually got tattooed by before. His name's Alboy on Instagram. What I really enjoy about this is the lack of following the rules of what's anatomically correct. The heads, they kind of stick out more, but it gives you a very stylized look. Also, I really love these rugs. I've actually already designed a few tiger rugs if you want to take a look at my Instagram page, but I kind of want to switch it up and just add all of these elements together. So based on this board, we know that we're going to do a brown and pink design, and we're not going to strictly follow anatomical rules, so we can get a bit more of a stylized look. I'm starting out the sketch with a simple light outline. This is just so I can get the basic shape. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. My sketching skills in this video aren't the best, but it doesn't really matter because the point is we're going to move on to the next stage and clean it up. Next thing I'm going to do is use a fine liner pen just to go over those lines again and make some final decisions, just making sure everything's in the right place and I can see everything nice and clearly. Finally, I'm just going to go in with a marker pen. You can use any type of Sharpie or whatever. And I just want to make sure I'm getting all of the dark areas filled in. And we'll do the colors when we move on to the digital stage. The program I use to make my artwork is Adobe Illustrator. I use it because it works in vector, which basically means I can make an image any size and blow it up to wherever I want it to be. If you don't use this, don't worry, because some of the principles will apply. First thing I'm going to do is change the transparency so that I can see my lines. And I'm going to go to the pen tool. The pen tool allows me to draw lines, and it's what we're going to make the image out of. If I press the pen tool down twice, then it makes a straight line. If I press it down twice, hold it, and move the mouse and then do several lines, I can make a shape. Just to show you again slowly, if I press down again and hold and drag the mouse, I can change the shape and then do a few more clicks, and that will give me the shape that I want, in this case for the claw. Now if I select the white arrow tool, I can move the tails to adjust the curve in the lines and change the shape to exactly how I need it to be. Don't worry if the vector lines are a little bit off from your initial illustration, because you won't see them when it's all said and done. Next, I'm going to go over to the shape tool, and I'm going to use the rounded rectangle, and I'm going to draw this shape for the chains. And I'm going to take the little corner and drag it in just to make it a bit more rounded. Once that's done, I can press Command C and then Command V to copy and paste. I'm using the Mac, and I can just scale it down by holding Shift. Next, I'm moving over to my Pathfinder, and by pressing this button here, I can actually remove the inside and make a brand new shape. Now moving over to my colors and swatches, I can actually change the color of the inside by pressing on the buttons which correspond to the colors. If I want to change the stroke, I can just click the stroke button and then mess around with what I like. If I want to change the color of multiple items at once, I can click on one, go to select, same, fill and stroke color, and now selected both of them. And when I change the fill, it changes both rather than me having to change them all individually. It saves a lot of time. And using those principles, I'm just going to go ahead and finish off the whole drawing until I end up with something that looks like this. Using the same colors from the color board, I've used a brown, and then I've used a beigey cream, and then a pink just to offset it a little bit. And I've just used gray for the chains. I'm going to make a document with the largest size paper that I can print. For me, that's A4. I'm going to go over to the shape tool again, and I'm going to make a shape that is as long as the frame that I'm using. In this case, it's 63 centimeters. And I'm just going to make that red so I can see it more clearly. Now I'm going to go back to my other file and copy and paste the design onto this, turn it around so that I can get the width properly, and then reshape the design so it fits the exact measurements that I need. Now the next step is to make sure that I can print it on individual pages. So I'm going to make a square, and I'm going to select both of them, and I'm going to go to make clipping mask after I've done a right click. And what that does is it hides the rest of the design behind the shape which was on top. In this case, it was the rectangle. So if I click into it, you can see that this design is still there and it's not been destroyed. So if I copy this and drag it along, and then double click into the shape, I can change which part of it is shown and which part is hidden. And that way I can get the rest of the design on each of the pages. And just lay them all out like this. And now we're ready to print. With all my pages printed, all I need to do is take my scissors and cut out each shape, removing all of the excess white around the edges. I've cut these in a way that they'll slot together, so I've added these tabs. I've just done it about an inch on each side, and basically what will happen is these will slot together perfectly. So when I'm putting the design together, I can put that on top and then stick it down. Then this would go on top of this, and I'd stick that down, and then this would go in between this on top of that. What I've made sure I've done is get the tape to go all the way to the edge and then all the way across each bit, not leaving any gaps. And the reason that I've done this is basically because the next step is to transfer this onto the monk's cloth, which is what we're going to use as the base for the rug. I'm going to be cutting out all of the lines and drawing around them. If there's gaps where the sellotape is, it's going to start falling apart. It's going to be harder for me to do the smooth lines. So just make sure that when you're doing this, if you choose to do this, you need to make sure that the tape goes all the way across and it hits every single edge so that you don't have any gaps and it doesn't fall apart. Before we can actually add the design onto the fabric, we need to figure out what fabric we're actually going to use. Some of the best fabrics are ones that are very porous. They have large gaps between the fibers, and this allows for the punch needle to go through without damaging the fabric. And then what it does as well is it shrinks up and it tightens around the loop. This is linen. If you look very closely, you can see where the holes are. I don't like this as much. I find that the actual fabric itself is quite tough. If you skip a bit and you hit, it kind of moves the punch needle in different directions. It's hard to get a smoother line for me personally. What I like to use is monk's cloth. It's funny because it actually looks like it's got smaller holes, but the actual fabric itself, it moves more easily and it's a lot softer. You can get straighter lines because you can go actually in between the fabric itself, and I think it closes up a lot better. For this one, we're actually going to be using the monk's cloth, so let me get rid of this linen. So this is the tool that I used. It's called a punch needle. Basically, it's just a hollow piece of wood. To use it, all you do is put the filament inside, and then you just take your wool and awkwardly push it through, and then you just pull it out to the other side like that. All you need to do is push the needle in the direction that you want to go, and then you pull the string through the other side, and from there you're ready to go in the direction that you want to go. And if you made a mistake, because that one's a bit wonky, all you do is pull. And then on the other side, you end up with these little loops. And that's basically what makes the rug. So what I've done is gone on Amazon, bought a regular painting canvas, and I've cut out the canvas part, and then I've cut out the middle strip here to leave just this big open frame, which I can now use. So I'm gonna take a staple gun and I'm just gonna go all the way across the edge. So I'm going to turn over my frame and I'm going to draw the illustration on the inside. The reason why I do it on the inside is because I found that when I'm doing the rug punching, it becomes loose more quickly if I draw it on the other side. And if I'm pushing down on the push needle, it tends to make the fabric a bit more loose. So I'm just going to go over with some scissors, cut it all out and then draw around each line. It's quite a time consuming process, but it gets it all done evenly, and that's what you want, especially when you're working with symmetry. I'm starting this design off with the black outline. I find that with the outline done, it's easier to make sure that the rest of the colors that go on the inside end up being the correct thickness, and it doesn't limit the line size that you can use. So for example, if you look at where I've done on the ear here, I've done a very thin line to separate out the inner ear to the outer ear, and I've done a very thick line to separate the outer ear from where the flame, the collar, and the head of the third dog would be. It's a nice way of creating different depths. So one problem that you might have when you're using the punch needle is it catching. There's a certain amount of slack that I have. So basically the ball of the thread is on the floor at the moment, and I've got a lot of extra thread. But the problem is if you use the punch needle, so if you push in here, say this is really tight, what will happen is as you start punching, because this is pulling, you notice that it's not attaching into it properly because this is being held. So it needs to be very loose. There's this much just left hanging around loose. When I actually do the loops properly, I'll push that in and then pull the loop through. So now, because there's a lot of slack, as I'm using the punch needle, you'll see that the line has actually been caught properly. When I'm punching, I like to work in sections. Because my work with this rug particularly is symmetrical, I can see if I've made any mistakes on this side, and then I can just do the same thing on the other side so that it all looks quite even. Come through here, pull this through. So I'm just going to do from there to there. The more taut that the actual fabric is, the easier it is to punch. So even though I've actually already stapled it to the edge, I tend to push down on it a little bit just because that gives me a little bit extra tautness. So like for example, if I don't, then it kind of comes up and out the fabric, even though I have done it very tight. Because if I push down on it, the fabric stays in place and I can just keep punching through. Very light pressure when I'm punching this, and very light pressure with my hand. When you're punching the rug, you want to make sure that you go all the way out and then touch just the edge, because the higher you go, it will leave a loop on this side, and you don't want loops on this side. You want it to be flat. Come all the way out and just make sure that it's touching the fabric when you come out, so you don't want to go any higher, and then you go all the way in, and that way you get the full loop on the other side. So all the way to the top, all the way in, just at the top, just so it's resting. You don't want to have any sort of hang time, and then go in. And another thing that's really important is you want to make sure that the punch needle is facing in the direction that you're going. So if I pull this out, you can see at the open part here, because you've got these two sides, you've got the open bit, and then obviously on the other side, you've got where the wall comes out. You want to make sure that this side, the open side, is facing the direction that you're going in. So I've just gone this way, and then because I'm swapping directions, I've swiveled it a bit, and it's just going to go down this way instead. And then I'm just going to turn this and then go in the other direction. This is what the design looks like once all of the black and all of the outlines have been finished. Pretty much, because most of the design was black and outlined anyway, it's pretty much almost done, which is good for me because it took a very long time. Just as a time reference as well, it takes about a day, like a full day of artwork to get this amount of work done. But the reason that I wanted to show you this as well is because this is the back side. So this is the side that's going to be laying down obviously flat on the floor or flat on the wall, if that's how you want to do it. But the front side, which is the side with all the texture, which is what we're going to be displaying, looks like this. So as you can see, this doesn't really look like much of anything. It looks more like a Rorschach painting than an actual rug. With rugs, and with most art as well, there's always this awkward middle stage, which I talk about a lot, where the work doesn't exactly look exactly how you want it to. And I just want to show you that if your rug looks like this, not to panic or not to worry. The rest of the detail isn't in, and what happens is, because the fabric is so fluffy, it's taking up more space than it needs to, but once the rest of the fabric's put in, it will fill up the space and it will all look exactly how we want it to look, hopefully. So once you finish punching this part of the design, what you'll find is there's a lot of flyaways. Literally all you need to do is just go through and just cut them off, and then it blends in seamlessly with the rest of it. This is what it looks like with all of the brown done on the back side. It's starting to take a bit of shape, and this is what it looks like on the front. In the face now you're seeing a lot more of the details, and especially in the body it's starting to take a bit more of a shape. So if I was doing a cat, then I feel like these whiskers would probably be pretty cool, but that's not what we're doing right about now. So what we need to do is, once again, just click these. And you're better off cutting these off in smaller sections rather than doing the whole thing and then cutting them all off, just because they can tend to get in the way when you're doing the rest of the hooks. And then it can kind of catch, and then you've got a bit of an issue with how you're doing it. But I would say to try and do, every time you do a small section, turn it over, cut off the strands, and then start again. Moving on to the part of the mane which has pink. Now I can see how many lines I've done for each of these parts, and then I can make the thickness the same. So for example, if you look here carefully, there's 3 separate lines that make up this loop here. So you see I've done 2 lines, but it kind of almost fills the same amount of space to the eye. When you're doing this, it can become very easy to forget and misplace, and then you end up, when you turn to the side, the thickness is at different levels and it can kind of throw off the symmetry. So what I would do is just go through and do a 3rd line now. And what you can do as well is you can go in between. So rather than doing the 3rd line on the outside, I can do some of it on the inside. So I'll go in between and then go up. And I can go back to the outside of this line and then go to the end here. And now if you look, it's 3 lines again on this side and 3 lines on this side. So when I turn it over, it will be even. When you're doing small details like the eyes, what you want to do is you want to make sure that there's an equal amount of loops on the other side. If I was to push in this and do like 3, then it would kind of maybe look wonky. It needs to be 4 so that it can kind of make a diamond shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a cross. So I'm going to go in, and then I'm gonna pull this out, and I'm gonna go just to the edge, down again, then I'm gonna go to the side of it and go down again, and I'm gonna cross that line by going to this part on the side. And I'm just gonna repeat that process again, so a bit closer up so you can see it. So it goes in, and then we pull this from the other side. There's that, and then when I come out, I'm just gonna edge forward and go down, turn it a bit, and then I'm gonna edge forward and go to the left side of it, go down, turn it again, swap hands with the camera without it looking weird, and out, and then over it and down, and that's my cross. And you can see now on the other side, these are quite round. So now just to finish the design, all I'm going to do is go and finish the gray for the chains. I think the contrast on this is really nice. I'm also going to go with the beige thread and do the rest of the flames. And then I'm just going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut away all of the excess strands. Then I'm going to take my tool and get rid of the staples and remove the rug from the frame. Okay, so moving on to the most time consuming, boring, but still most important part of doing the rug, we need to do the finishing. So a lot of people ask if you're supposed to put a backing on it or put glue on it. You actually don't have to. It's pretty much in there really tight. You can glue it, but sometimes the glue can actually degrade the wool, and then you can put a backing on it, but I don't like a backing because if you look at the back, it's got all of the nice stitching detail, and I feel like it's kind of a waste to cover all of that up, so I think it's nice to have that displayed. To finish this, what we're going to do is, rather than adding something to the back, because like I said, it will stay, what we want to do is a whip stitch around the edge. So the first thing that we want to do to make that happen is take our fabric scissors and cut, leaving about 1 inch of space around the entire edge of the design. There we have it. So I've cut 1 inch around and we've just got this much space left. So what we want to do now is take the same fabric scissors and we want to cut little slits into the edge that we've got halfway down, but we don't want it to go all the way to the edge, because what will happen is it will start unraveling. They can be about 1 inch, 2 inches apart. Take about 2 arms length of thread. I'm gonna really awkwardly thread this because it's larger. I should have more the chance of it. Yes. So to start, we're going to take one of our edges and we're going to fold it in half. I stitch from right to left just because I'm right-handed. Now this is quite a large pin and it's not sharp at all, and it allows me to get this large thick thread. We're going to go in right at the edge there. If it comes through some of the stitches, that might even be better. And then you go down through and we're going to put it all the way until we have about, it's about 1 inch left. You hold this down slightly to the left and go in. Let it make a loop around the one that you bent, and then make sure that it's gone over this part, and then we're going to go over it again. So basically what you're doing is you're stitching over the excess that you have from it. Because you're pulling this so tight, the tension is going to keep it in. As you can see now, you've already got this loop here, and this is going to travel all the way around the edge. So I'm coming to the end of this. So what I want to do is I want to push this through the loops that I've already done, because then what that will do is it will fasten this, and then I'm going to cut it. Put it as tight as you can, because all that's going to do is tighten that last loop. And then I'm just going to cut off the edge. And there you go, that's been fastened in. And as you can see here, as I was going through, I made a little bit of a mistake here. So there's like a little bit of a loop missing. So if you do that, what you can do is start again with your thread, just take a little bit this time. Start at the back. We're gonna go through and just hook it through, just before it in. Make a loop. And there you go. And I'm just gonna make sure I do 3 loops just so it's really nice and secure. One more. It's really hard to do because they're quite tight loops, which is good because it means they will stay in. Go through this, snip it, and there we go. So what I'm going to do now is go all the way through. This is, like I said, the most boring and time consuming element, and it makes it a quality product. You can do a flat backing if you do a simple shape like a square or a circle, but because this is quite intricate shape, it takes a bit more time. But if you want it how you want it, which I do, you need to sacrifice for it. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a long one. I'm proud of you for getting all the way through it, and I'll see you later. Bye.